What is going on, everybody? It is Wednesday, 4 o'clock, and it's once again time for Streaming on Streaming. So welcome to episode 6 of Streaming on Streaming, December 7th already. Can you believe it is already December? We are fresh back from reInvent. I had an amazing time, was completely overwhelmed at the sheer size and number of people and content and just massiveness of it all. Unfortunately, I did bring home the one gift that nobody wants to bring home from Vegas, and that is the flu. So I've been a little bit under the weather since returning from Vegas, but actually starting to feel a little better and excited to hang out with you all and talk about some Amazon IVS chat again. In our last session, I guess it was 3 weeks ago now because we missed the week for the holiday, Thanksgiving here in the States, and we missed last week for reInvent. So I guess it's been a while since we've been on the air, but I'm excited to be back and actually excited to talk about chat, finish up this kind of look at IVS chat that we started a few weeks ago. And I'm actually excited about a couple of upcoming episodes we still have left here for this year. Next week, I'm going to be joined by a very special guest, Linda Haviv. And we've got some fun stuff in store. We're going to build something really fun. If you know Linda, you know that she's just has an amazing amount of energy, talent, knowledge, all of the above. And so I'm excited to have Linda join me next week. And then on the 21st, we're going to do something crazy. We're going to spend a couple hours and we're going to build something kind of related to live streaming. It's going to be a surprise. No, it's not going to be a surprise. It is a remote control camera. And it's going to use all kinds of cool things. And it's going to be able to be controlled with a video game controller so you can live stream and actually move your camera, pan, tilt, zoom, all that fun stuff. So, lots to look forward to coming in the month of December. Not just going into hibernation and calling it a year. We've got more content coming. So as I said, getting over the flu, so hopefully you won't mind me sipping on some tea as we go to keep my voice kind of alive. And I've got a special guest today. Actually, we've got Stanley the Dachshund hanging out on the chair behind me. So say hi to Stanley. And cool. So that being said, what is your favorite kind of tea? What kind of tea do you like? I'm drinking Earl Grey today. That's kind of one of my favorites. I like Earl Grey. I don't like a lot of herbal teas. Some of them are okay, but my favorite is Earl Grey. I think. Peppermint. Peppermint is my favorite tea. Earl Grey would be my second favorite tea. Raymond Camden likes beer tea. I'm gonna go ahead and highlight that comment. I'm not sure that that's a thing. What's the closest thing to beer tea? Like kombucha? Is that a thing? The kombucha is a thing, but isn't there some kind of fermented beverage that involves tea? What am I thinking of? Let's see here. True Mad Rag says with Jack Daniels, beer tea with Jack Daniels. That's a combination. Boyzoid says Irish tea. Irish tea is also good. Tesseract, chamomile with peppermint. Another fine choice. I love the peppermint. Peppermint is good. Tea is good. Did you know that whether you call it chai or tea depends on the method of travel in which how that thing got to? This is what I understand. This is what I read. From what I understand, if it travels by land, if tea traveled to an area by land, so for example, if it traveled by land into India, this is what I've read, it is called chai. If it traveled by sea to get to an area. In other words, over the Pacific to the North America, it's called T. I don't know if that's true or not. I'd love to learn more about that. But yeah, nice little tea conversation. I hella enjoy a good chai latte, which I guess is road latte. Yeah, that's. I've also heard that people get very irritated when you call it chai tea. Some people do, because it's redundant. It's like ATM machine kind of thing. Anyways, let's quickly review where we were at since it's been quite a while. So we are talking about chat. And in our last session, we created a chat room. And to do that, in the AWS console, we come to the IVS homepage, we click on Rooms, then we can click on Create Room. We give our room a name, select the configuration, and for chat moderation, we can either disable it or we can handle it with an AWS Lambda, and that's what we took a look at last week. If you weren't here last week, you can catch the episode on demand on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/recursive codes. So give that a look if you're interested and want to catch up. So, chat moderation. We created a very simple Lambda function to moderate our chat messages last time. We talked about the benefits of automated moderation versus manual moderation. We created this very simple Lambda function that you see here. And every time a chat message gets sent to this room now, an event will get fired. We'll fire this Lambda function, and the Lambda function will receive this JSON in this structure as you see here. So the message content, message ID, any attributes that you've associated with it, and the sender information. And so that's all available in this event. And what we have to do is return a JSON object with a review result, which is whether or not you want this message to continue to be passed through the to the chat room, and the content. In this case, we're simulating censoring, for lack of a better term. Content modification is maybe a nicer word for that. But in other words, we're replacing bad word, case insensitive globally, with this string, which is just a set of asterisks. Could you post a link to the previous episode? This is Amazon Video Service. Does this integrate natively into Twitch? Sorry to derail. No problem. No worries at all with the derailing. That's what we're here for. Totally encouraged. Love chat messages. Love to interact with all of you. So, yeah, I should kind of stop. And for new viewers, shouldn't assume that everybody is a returning viewer. We're talking about Amazon Interactive Video Service. And what is Amazon Interactive Video Service? Well, Amazon Interactive Video Service is a AWS service that allows you to build live streaming applications like Twitch. So if you wanted to build a user-generated content platform that allows users to sign up, create a channel, stream their content, whatever it is, to an audience of subscribers, and add the interactive features like chat, timed metadata, among other things, Amazon IVS is the service for you. So let me go ahead and find a link for you. Tesseract, 1 second. And if you want to catch up on past episodes, I will post that link to... I'm not finding the playlist link. Where is it? Playlist. Okay, there we go. So streaming on streaming playlists. Posting the link in chat. All right. So that is a playlist with all of the previous episodes of this show, and kind of get you up to speed. If it's a lot. I mean, we're talking about probably 5 hours worth of content right there. But also, if you're also interested, I should refer you to this link, which is a collection of different blog posts that kind of walk you through building some of these features that we have talked about. So tons of resources if you're interested in creating a live streaming application or just integrating live streaming into your application. Maybe you have a conference app or some kind of business application. Maybe you're doing e-commerce, retail. Maybe you're trying to build the next influencer community for long-haired English cream mini dachshunds like Stanley. Whatever you're trying to do, Amazon IVS can help you out. It's really easy to work with. And yeah, cool. So Tesseract says, I'd be more interested in applications to integrate into Twitch. This is very cool, and I'm excited to ideate with it. Well, I'm glad you're here, and yeah, it is a fun service. And if you do have any ideas about Twitch, you could certainly shoot them to me, and I'd be glad to pass them on if I could. So yeah, awesome. So, excuse me, just clearing my throat there. Just wanted to mute so y'all didn't have to hear that. All right, so our Lambda handler. So in this case, we did a very, very scientific regex to replace a bad word. And we also passed a reason that will get passed back to the client to so you can display a reason for moderating a chat. Mr. Stanley wanted to sit on my lap. Sorry about that. All right. So, obviously, your real life moderation function is going to be a little more complex than a simple regex. Although, honestly, kind of a simple allow list, simple block list is not a bad thing. It's something. If for some reason you needed to, for example, if you go on Twitch today, you can, in the chat moderation functions, you can specify your own allow list and block list. Thank you, Raymond. Much appreciated. Always good to have a pet in the lap, especially in cold winter months. So yeah, Twitch allows you to specify your own allow list and block list of terms. So if there's a certain term that you wanted to filter out, this is a perfect way to do that. You could build a function for your chat moderators to build their own allow lists and block lists, and you could use this function to do that. In reality, in the case that we're going to be working with here, what I have is, I'll show you. So I have this demo chat room, and it's not much better. I don't know, I shouldn't say better. It's not much more complex, but it's certainly not as simplistic. And what that is a Lambda function that uses a third-party library called two-toed/profanity. Zoom in a little bit so you can see that better. So it's two-toed/profanity, and it's a really nice library. I didn't create it. I'm not, I got a little distracted here by a message from Automod that somebody is, I have a message pending for swearing, and unfortunately, it's in either Russian or Ukrainian, and I'm not able to read that, so I'm not going to be able to moderate that. But that's chat moderation in action. See? People are just amazing helping me out with the examples in chat. So let me back up here. Got a couple questions that I did not see. Hello, can you use, Frag0 says, hello, can you use AI to respond to messages in IVS chat? That's a great question. And the answer to that is maybe. And the reason I say maybe is because you have to return a response within 200 milliseconds. So it's going to be 1 second here. Just checking the messages here. Okay. So it's going to be difficult to use any kind of third-party services to really do anything reasonable with that. If you don't return something within 200 milliseconds, it's going to kind of use your fallback, what's called the fallback result. So when you initially create your room, if I show you that real quick, when you initially create your room and you ask to specify an allow handler, you have to specify a fallback result. So if you have an error or a timeout or anything like that, it's going to either automatically allow, so being a little optimistic, or you can set it to deny everything, so being very pessimistic, so you don't want to take any chances. So there's nothing limited in the Lambda function other than that result time, right? You have 200 milliseconds. It's limited, and it makes it tricky to really do any kind of AI. But stay tuned. You never know how IVS chat is going to evolve. If you have a really interesting use case and you want me to pass it along to our engineers, and you have a really big project that depends on it, I'd be glad to take it to them and see what they think. But yeah, so another question. Could you leverage Amazon Macie or pre-trained model in SageMaker to perform some basic moderation? Again, if you could get that done within 200 milliseconds, yeah, so that's the limitation. I guess AI could still be used for, say, responding to messages in chat rather than blocking messages from arriving. Maybe the 200 milliseconds wouldn't apply in that case. Yeah, I mean, as long as you triggered it outside of the chat process, so in other words, maybe, let me think about this. Now y'all have me thinking. I mean, what you could technically do. So we have an SDK method that you can use through the AWS SDK. So like your traditional JavaScript, Node, Java, whatever SDK, we have a send message that you could use that sends a message or sends an event, sends an event to your chat room via the SDK. So I guess technically what you could do is in your handler, you could probably spawn some kind of async process by calling some kind of webhook or third party, and then deliver the event. Don't render it on the front end. In other words, just queue it in memory instead of rendering it directly to the chat. And then use send event as a result of that third party call, and then send that to the chat room and use that to determine whether or not to display the message. I mean, we're getting creative here. I mean, definitely we're getting extremely creative, and obviously that's not going to, I mean, we're talking probably seconds now in between the message being posted and that kind of thing. So, but there's tons kind of in the work here, and I would just kind of say stay tuned. And as we go along here, kind of keep those questions coming. Good stuff. So back to my handler here. I have this profanity library installed in my Lambda. If you're just joining us, apologies for the tea. Being under the weather, and if you're just joining us, let us know your favorite tea in the chat. We had a little conversation, a little poll earlier, and everyone's posting their favorite tea. We have Stanley. Do you use Lambda layers for installing the modules? Another good question by Angular developer. In this case, absolutely. That is what I did. I used Angular layers or Lambda layers in order to get this library available to my moderation function. So I can show you that. Layers right here. So if I click on that, I have a layer called SAMapp dependencies. And if I edit that, you can't see it. I could open it locally, but yes, trust me, that's what I did, and that's how I'm including that library. So throw Stanley back on his chair. All right. So profanity library, I have two functions here, just kind of playing around with things. I have a censor function. And the censor function, what it does is it calls profanity.censor, and then passing it the content of the message, so whatever's coming into that message. And what it does is it censors out bad words. Let me see if we can pull up the docs for that library. All right, zoom in. So here's an example. So censor. It's censoring that sentence, and what it returns is this. So it just replaces any profane words to using something called a Grawlix. What is a Grawlix? I guess that's what that means when you kind of replace bad words with characters. Okay. So yeah. We're using that, and we're censoring any content in the incoming message. And I'm just passing back out the event, the attributes that came in on the event. So I want to make sure that those are returned back to the chat room, because that contains your username, your user ID, things like that. So I'm passing those back. So message comes in. I'm going to allow it and censor it. I'm going to censor it and send it back to the client. We'll look at that in just a second, what that looks like. The second thing I was playing with was, what if we just want to reject inappropriate chats? We just want to get rid of them. Don't want them to be displayed at all. If there is a profane word, just nuke it, get rid of it. And the way that's done, and these are two different options. I'm not using both of these. I have these deployed as two different Lambdas, and I switch between them in order to test them. But in that case, what I do is I use the profanity.exists, the exists method of the profanity library, and that just returns a Boolean, whether or not there's a bad word in that string. And based on that result, I either deny it or allow it. Very simple. The content, if it is profane, I'm returning an empty string. And if not, I'm returning just the raw content back. So just a simple check whether we're going to reject it or allow it. Again, passing the attributes back. So that, if we look at the demo that we started coding last week, we will be able to see this in action. So just a quick reminder of what we have here. We have a div to display our chat messages. We have an input to accept the text. Let me bump this font up a little bit. Let me know how that looks, if that looks good. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Looking at the feed myself. All right. And then we have a button to send the message. In our DOM content loaded listener, obviously I'm just going to use vanilla JavaScript for this example. If we were using React, Angular, Vue, Alpine, what are the name your favorite framework. If we're using those, obviously things are going to change a little bit. Things are going to be a little different. Anyhow, in a vanilla JS world, we're going to use WebSockets to connect to our chat room. We need a token, and I feel like I'm repeating our last episode, but that's okay for the benefit of those who are new. The token is what associates a this WebSocket connection to a specific chat room. And B, this user. It associates this user session with that chat room. So this is how, for example, in our Lambda moderation function, we know who the user is that sent the message. It's how when we render the message on the screen, we know who sent the message. And it's also how, if for some reason we need to manually disconnect a user because of maybe abusive behavior or repeated violations, this is how we can associate that user with it. So we need a token. We're going to get a token. We need the endpoint. In our case, it's this specific WebSocket endpoint. And then we create a connection using WebSockets, passing it the endpoint, passing it the token. We have a message listener for incoming messages. So we have connection.add event listener message. And in this case, we're just logging it out. We're going to enhance that in a second. We have a button click listener. For that's when we click on the button to send a message. It gets the message from the text input and grabs the value of that, creates a payload with an action of send message and a content of message, whatever the message is. Then we call send on the connection, stringify that payload, reset the text input to empty, and then reset the focus on the input. So if we run this, actually it should already be running. And before I reload the page, I'm going to need a token. So I'm using the CLI here to generate that token. This is not what you're going to do in your application. You're going to use the SDK. We covered this in the last episode. If you missed that one, check that episode out. All right, reload the page, paste the token, hit enter, and we've got a connection. We are connected to our IVS chat room. If we send a message and click send, we can see that it's logged to the console. Awesome. So if we store that as a global variable, we see JSON.parse. The, what is it, data? Yes, sorry, data. We can see our message object, and that has the content of tests. So, awesome. We can send a message. 1 second, please. Thank you for bearing with me through that mild flu coughing spell. So we can send the message. It gets echoed back to us. Now, just to demonstrate things, what if we send a profane word to that? We can see in the content here that it was switched to that Growlix. So it'll look better when we actually render that out to the screen. So let's do that. Let's open up our message handler here and let's grab a hold of the message and parse it. And as always, if you all have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. So that's our message. Let's grab a hold of the chat container, a reference to that. And that is called chat, I believe. Yes. Once we have a reference to the chat container, we can actually render the message in it. So we'll say inner HTML plus equals, and let's wrap it in a div. And for our username, we'll wrap it in bold text. And we will grab the user from our message, which it should be in attributes.username. And the way that happens, just to kind of remind you, is when we generated our token, I passed attributes username equals Todd. So this is a list of key value pairs that get set into that token. So every time you send a message on that chat connection, that becomes part of your attributes object and is available to be retrieved and used from that object. 1 second, please. All right. So we render the username and throw a colon, and let's just render the message content. Yeah, so that should do it. So if we come back, get a new token, reload the page, and we send a message again. Oh, all right. Well, we've got an error here. Cannot read properties of null, reading username. So, all right. Well, let's log out message and see why it's missing username. So if we send again, all right. That's because it is in the sender object, not the, so the attributes is different. Attributes is something that you can send along with a specific message. The ones that are set from the token are actually in the sender object. So my bad, my fault. Let me, let's modify that. So message.sender.attributes.username. All right, that should work. So yeah, we can leave that being logged out. Let's delete that log. Add a little white space in there. So we need another token. Let's get another token. All right, catching up on the chat. FYI, your face is out of focus. Is it still out of focus? This camera usually does a pretty good job of autofocusing. It might be the light back here. Let me dim that and see if that helps. The light might be trying to grab some of the focus. All right. Anyways, if it's still out of focus, focus on the browser. Don't look at this face. You shouldn't be looking at that. Got it. Classic. Why being able to iterate quickly is the true key to software development success. You are absolutely right. Iterating quickly. All right. Now, what happens when we send it? All right. So we got our message sent and rendered. What happens if we send a bad word? And hopefully no one will be offended by this bad word. But there. All right. This is crap. So if we send that, we can see that we have our censored message. Now, that is an example of the Lambda function in action. Let's, got 32 minutes. All right, excellent. So just to kind of recap, if you're just joining us, we are talking about Amazon IVS Chat, building upon the previous episode where we kind of introduced IVS Chat. So we've got a chat message posted. We've got Lambda moderation in effect working, and what's the word I used? Not censored, modified, appropriate. I don't know. Censoring the chat, whatever you want to call it. I call it censoring. It's not a bad thing. Sometimes you just want to have control over potentially offensive items in your chat room. There's nothing wrong with that. So that's what it is. So that's where we're at. And now we're going to, 1 second. Sorry about that. So now we're going to move on to manual chat moderation. So we've talked about automated chat moderation. Obviously that works. Should be used in conjunction with kind of a two-pronged approach. And have some moderated manual moderation. So to do that, I'm going to change the message handler. Pardon me. So I'm going to change the message handler, or the incoming message handler. And I want to add, I'm doing this so that I can add an icon. Number one, so I can add an icon so that the moderator has something to click and just delete a message. Number two, so that I can add the message ID to each message so that we know which messages we need to delete, right? So because manual moderation, the message has already made it through for whatever reason. If somebody got creative and used a lowercase L instead of a capital I, you know, whatever, a 1 instead of an I, or a at instead of an A. And somehow they've made it past our amazingly complex automated moderation Lambda function. And now we have a moderator, or you know, it may be something that is just in context. Certain things may be offensive. Maybe saying something might make it through your automated filter, but in context or in response to something else, it could be offensive or abusive or something like that. So that's why manual moderation, right? So here, what we want to do is add the message ID to the div that contains our message. This way, when we get an incoming moderation message, we know which item to either delete or modify. Now let's add a button. So we'll call it a delete icon. And I have some CSS classes set up down in the style block that will help style this and make it a little prettier. Role equals button. And we will use I believe that's the times symbol. I believe. We'll see. So we've got that. And that should be good. And now, actually, should we do this now or should we do this later? We'll do it now because we're kind of getting close on time here. So I'm actually going to change this. I'm going to add a switch because in anticipation of the eventual moderation messages that are going to come in, they're going to also come in as a message. So we need to handle those differently because a message, a moderation message is a event. It's not a message. So what we want to do here is listen for messages and handle them as messages. So I'll paste that back in. And also add a case for events. So the moderation events will be handled differently. We'll populate that in a minute, but this just gives us the flexibility to add it in when we get there. So let's save that, generate a token, reload, and all right, perfect. So we have our delete icon for our moderators. And I should also mention here, and obviously your application would know who to display a delete icon for. You're not going to display a delete icon for every single user, right? Your token contains your capability. So everybody needs send message so they can send messages. Moderators need to delete messages, the delete message capability, and to disconnect users, the disconnect user capability. So your token kind of tells the chat room whether or not you have the ability to perform an action. So even if we sent this icon or sent this ultimate delete message that we're about to, without that capability, we would not be able to do it. We'd receive an error back. So just looking at the source here, you can also see that message ID is associated in a data element attribute on our chat row. All right. So what we need to do now is listen for that delete. And I'm going to cheat here because we're running short on time. And I'm going to run over to the solution and I'm going to copy and paste that. So I've got this click handler. We'll come back here and we will paste that down here. So let's go over that quickly. So I'm attaching a listener to the chat div. That is the div that contains everything, right? And the reason I'm doing this is because right now nothing exists, right? No, there's no chat messages to delete. But every time they come in, we're adding that new span with a class of delete icon. So through event bubbling, we can attach the listener to the parent div and then listen for clicks on all of the children. So even the children that don't exist yet, including the ones that will be created when our event messages get posted. And then in our handler, just check to see if that class list contains delete icon, and we know that this is a click event on a delete icon. So when we hear a delete, click on the delete icon, we get a reference to the div. We grab that message ID that we just looked at. We craft a payload using the action of delete message, passing it the ID and giving it a reason. And then we send that on the connection. So the WebSocket connection, we send that payload just like we would send a normal chat message. So delete is just done with a different payload specifying a different action. So if we save that, reload the page, grab a token, paste it in, send a message, click delete, and okay, they're good. All right, so I clicked on that, and you could see now here, we get logged a new item incoming in our message handler. This one has an event name of AWS delete message. It has an ID of that, and that's it. Yeah, that's it. So this is how we handle the manual moderation. Every time this message comes in, we need to handle this and either, based on our business rules, either remove that message from the div, just delete it, or if we want to replace it, maybe just replace it with a generic message. If we want to replace it maybe with the reason, we could do that. So let's hop back to the code. Let's scroll up here and we'll copy and paste this over to here. So now when a new message comes in, if the message event name is delete message, we're going to search our chat container for a div containing that data message ID. And we're going to, in this case, replace the inner HTML with the message.attributes.reason. Mr. Simpson, what's IVS? We will chat about that in just a bit. I'll get back to that. So let's give this a shot. Back to the console, grab a token, refresh, paste, test, send. Now when I click delete, what should happen is this word test should be replaced with removed by moderator? We've got an error. Okay, line 34. So query selector message content. Did I miss that? I think I missed that. Yep. We need a span. Okay. So if I replace this with that, yes, perfect. Thank you for that. Locrizak, IVS is a AWS service that allows you to set up live streams in like 5 minutes. Couldn't have said it better myself. Somebody's actually listening. No, that's awesome. Yes, Twitch, service to build applications like Twitch. So if you wanted to build your own Twitch, you could do that. Live streams, chat, timed metadata, all that good stuff. Mr. Simpson and Locrizak, what's your favorite tea? Just throwing that out there. All right, that should work. We should be there now. Get a token, reload, paste, test, send, delete, removed by moderator. Perfect. Again, I mean, it's based on what you want to do. If you want to delete it, delete the element from the DOM. Just get rid of it, wipe it out. Let me look through my notes here. Actually, let's just scroll through the solution and see what else we may have missed. That appears to be everything, I believe. That is everything. So, that's automated moderation. That's manual moderation. What else can we talk about? Well, I should mention this. So far what we've done is we have looked at Locrizak. Another one, no tea, just beer. That's great. What's your favorite beer, I guess is the question then. I like a stout and I like a porter. I like a nice dark, heavy beer with some body and some soul. That's how I like beer. Also like rye whiskey, if you're interested in buying me a stocking stuffer this holiday season. No, kidding, of course. So what we've looked at so far is WebSockets, using WebSockets to connect up to the IVS chat room. And that's what you have to do because it's based on the WebSocket protocol. But we've done it with vanilla JavaScript. The IVS Chat Client Messaging SDK is a nice library that kind of abstracts away some of that. If you don't want to deal with raw WebSockets, I personally don't mind them. There's nothing complex about them. You create a connection, you add listeners, you call send. I mean, for me, it's not bad. But I do see the benefit of having a library like this. I mean, if you're using React, if you're using a TypeScript basically, and you want typed strict objects that you could use with the SDK, with your chat room, you could use this SDK. So you have essentially a chat room object. You pass it a token provider, and a token provider just is something that calls a backend function that returns that chat token. Once you have that set up, you can add listeners, and as you see here, let me bump that font up a little bit for you. So you have your event listeners. You can construct a message and all of the different things that you can do with raw JavaScript, you can do with this SDK. And I'll show you the docs here. So did I click on the wrong thing? I think oh, well, this is worth a shout too. There's a demo application. If you're interested in checking that out, I will post that in the chat. And there we go, SDK doc. So you have a nice documentation library here that goes over all the different classes, how to work with the SDK, essentially. Just, you have a chat message object, it's typed, you can have different attributes, everything you need to interact with and work with the chat client SDK. All very well documented. I will post that in the chat as well. 10 minutes left. Yeah. So what else? Let's talk about one more thing. And this wasn't actually available even 3 weeks ago when we first went over chat. There's a brand new feature with IVS Chat called chat logging, message logging. And what this is I'm going to give you 3 guesses what message logging involves with your IVS chat rooms. No, what it is a way to log every message that comes into your chat room, right? And it's a nice time-stamped way to handle that. And why would you want to do this? Well, I mean, besides the obvious, sometimes you just want kind of an archive of everything that happened in a specific chat room. It leads the way to building features like, for example, here on Twitch, if you come back tomorrow to this live stream and you watched it on demand instead of watching the live stream right now, you ever notice that the chat on a video on demand version on Twitch actually replays at the appropriate time, which is a really cool feature, right? It's a really nice thing to add to your application so that you can give your users a really nice experience. If you want to be able to replay a stream and have the chat replayed at the specific time, this is one way to do that. And I'm actually working on a blog post right now that kind of goes into a little more detail on how to do that. So chat logging, yeah, very cool. There's 3 different ways to do that. Let's take a look at that real quick. You can log it to CloudWatch, which is what I've been kind of playing with. I really like this option the more I think about it. Originally, I had been storing them to S3. The thing I don't like about storing them to S3 is they get stored in a really long, in a path that's really kind of long and complex. Like your chat ARN and the year is a folder, and then the month is a folder, and then the day is a folder, and then the hour is a folder, and I believe down to the minute is a folder. So when you go to try to retrieve those, it just felt like, wow, I just want a chat, a log from this minute to this minute, and I have to kind of now figure out what what folder it's going to be in. And then they're gzipped, so you have to unzip them at some point programmatically, and that becomes another step in the process. So all that being said, you can also deliver them to a Kinesis Firehose, Kinesis Data Firehose destination. I've not played with that a lot. I get the concept, but I think CloudWatch is just kind of nice because it just gets dumped into CloudWatch. You can use the CloudWatch UI. In fact, let's go look at it. All the messages all the stupid messages that I've been posting to that demo room that we were just looking at were logged and should be available for our viewing pleasure at this point. So, demo chat logged. Okay, there we go. All right. And there they are. So, the last one was sent at 14:53. Is that right? Oh, is that right? Yeah, that sounds about right. 12/7/22, 14:53. The timestamp seems off, but I might have done something wrong. Anyhow, that certainly looks about right. Oh, there we go. No, that's off too. 1953. I wonder what's going on here. That timestamp seems off because that's showing 7:53 GMT, and it should be like what, 9:53 GMT. Interesting. But essentially, the point being, all my chat messages are in CloudWatch. I can use the CloudWatch SDK. I can use the CloudWatch CLI, whatever I want to retrieve them. So, heck, I might as well show it while we're here. That allows us to do cool things like this. And in this case, actually, let me quickly... Oh boy, I'm never good at this, but Unix timestamp to date. Let's, well, yeah. So, local time, 4:50. So in the last, well, let's say the last 30 minutes. So that's my start time. We'll plug that in there. And until that. So I've got an input object, log group name. This is my log group name. Log stream names follows the format AWS/IBS chat log/1.0 room underscore, and then the final part of your room ARN. So your chat room ARN. That's the format. It'll make more sense in the blog post that I'm eventually going to write about this. A start time and an end time. That's the input object. We create a new filter log events command. This is using the CloudWatch logs client from the AWS SDK. So we have a client. We send it the request and create an object, basically mapping. What comes back is an object. In that object, there's a message. In that message is a JSON stringified version of the chat event. So if we parse that out, basically I have a replay of our chat message. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, what about moderation? And that's a great question. So you think about, maybe I've got a chat message A, chat message B, and then I've got a profane message that I needed to delete, and my moderator manually deleted that. Well, as you might remember from a few minutes ago, that comes in as a separate event on our chat room, and it comes in as an event, not as a message. Well, in that case, point being, we have to kind of recreate that structure, and the way I do that is I have this parse events method that loops over that array of events, and if it's a message, just push it to the stack. Okay, good. Just loop over every one. If it's just a message, push it to the stack. If it's an event, and that event is a delete message event, I go to that parsed event stack that I've been building. I find the index of the message that was deleted, and then I delete it. I delete it from that stack. So it's basically, in the case of deleting messages, that's how you would do it. If you wanted to replace the message content, like I showed earlier, do the same thing, just modify it a little bit. So basically, that's a way to kind of recreate the event stream so that eventually, when you get to the point where you have a video on demand recording and you want to replay that chat, you have a nice array of events time-stamped to render and display at the appropriate time in your stream. And there's a couple blog posts that go along with that. Essentially, we have to first look at how to record our video streams to S3. And that's a blog post that's coming. And then we're going to look at how to actually create the login configuration. So we're going to go into these in detail in blog posts and probably make a future stream about it, maybe, if folks are interested. But yeah, that is part 2 of Amazon IVS Chat. And I want to thank you all for joining again, of course, and for interacting. Awesome. Tons of interaction in the chat today. Love the comments about your favorite beverage. And again, join me next week, 4 o'clock, December 14th, Linda Haviv. We are going to build an actual lo-fi radio station. So you've seen them maybe on the web. You have the little GIF, little animated GIF that plays a certain animation on a loop. And you have a nice lo-fi track playing over top of it, kind of chill, kind of study, kind of relax. We're going to build one, and we're going to use Amazon IVS to do that. So join us, tell all your friends, tell all your family, tell all your relatives, and have them join us too. And again, thanks for joining Streaming on Streaming, and we'll see you next week.